Bill Gates has become so arrogant in recent times that he is happy for the cameras to catch him saying the quiet parts out loud.
Is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. So of course,
well, that's an interesting thing you just said, which is just the last 3 months in life for one person or something, because we haven't had a discussion of how to allocate that money. It means we lay off 3 teachers to do so. I mean, in other words, we haven't had this type of allocation.
We're making that trade-off because of huge medical costs that are not examined to see which ones actually have no benefit whatsoever. And because of pension generosity, we will be laying off over 100,000 teachers, which, I'm very much against that. And the whole AFT will agree with me on that.
Terrifying stuff, I'm sure you'll agree. Gates doesn't explain why we can't pay teachers and allow people to live out their lives in peace. Why is it either or? After all, in the past, we didn't have any problem paying teachers their salaries and allowing our elderly to enjoy their grandchildren during their golden years. This is the brutal, murderous world Bill Gates and his associates at the World Economic Forum are determined to roll out as part of their Great Reset. We can't allow their evil logic to become the new normal. If you are wondering what else they have up their sleeve, it's worth paying attention to what was happening at the G20 in Bali, Indonesia this week. The G20 is a summit featuring leaders of the most important economies in the world, and it's a mix of countries considered to be advanced or developing. Beyond the rooms where world political leaders sit around and thrash out various issues, there are dozens of side events where so-called dignitaries meet. As James Melville asked on Twitter, why were Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab in attendance at the G20? No one voted for them. The mainstream media is declaring anyone who asks this question to be a conspiracy theorist. But it's a totally legitimate question to ask. The world's richest man and the new emperor of Twitter, Elon Musk, was also in attendance there, just before he completely backtracked on his promises to turn Twitter into a free speech platform. Musk once declared himself a free speech absolutist. Now he is point blank refusing to reinstate Alex Jones's account and warning that freedom of speech does not mean freedom of reach. Musk appeared at the G20 alongside the more established figures of the globalist elite, including Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab, who has already used the forum to instruct world leaders to begin restructuring the global economy in line with the WEF's techno-communist vision. For his part, Gates is using the forum to instruct world leaders that death panels will be necessary in the near future in order to end the lives of sick and unwell people due to very, very high medical costs. Of course, Gates' death panels have everything to do with the globalist elite's obsession with depopulation. Bill Gates' plans for death panels mirrors the language used by the World Economic Forum regarding euthanasia, and the Canadian government's devilish new solution to solve inflation, homelessness, skyrocketing crime, and food shortages: euthanasia for the poor. The Trudeau regime say they are now offering to pay to euthanize people who are too poor to continue living with dignity.
This is violence. This is medicalized violence. Why isn't this being covered? Why aren't we talking about it? Especially when it's poor people, especially when it's working class people who are structurally pushed into that. I think that's a question worth asking.
Well, sure. And there's this very difficult problem, which is what do you do when an economy based on finance starts to go south and average people can't kind of sustain themselves? Do you do guaranteed basic income or whatever? This seems like an obvious choice for ghouls, neoliberal ghouls, like we'll just force poor people to kill themselves.
And how many times have we heard from Canada about their healthcare system, their social care system, talking down to us about so many things? And now it's come home to roost. Canada's policies are seen for what they are. And Canada has their own problems. We need to learn from this. We need to say, look, what's happening to our poor people, to our disabled people? The dementia population, Tucker, which we talked about the early part of the pandemic, is set to double in the next 20 years. It's going to triple in the next 30 years. What are we going to do? Are we going to put the resources into care for them? If we don't, I really only see 2 options: so-called robot care or straight up no chaser euthanasia.
Yeah. So why don't politicians just say out loud now? I mean, so many things we're seeing now we couldn't have imagined 10 years ago or 5 years ago even, and now they're commonplace.
That's right.
Killing yourself is not liberation. It's really sad. You shouldn't be forced to do it. Like, why does nobody say that?
Well, your show is an example of giving people a voice who have no voice. The people who are most dramatically impacted by this, the working class and the poor, don't have a voice. And so we need to decide. And it's so interesting to see the political realignment underway. Which party is going to be the voice of the working class, the working, and of the poor, to be on the side of people who say, I don't want to die. I don't want to die, but I don't see any option given what's been offered me. That's just diabolical.
It is diabolical is the word for it. And you've been writing about this for so long, and thank you for doing that. Professor, great to see you.
Canada's descent into barbarism should come as no surprise. The Canadian government has been completely penetrated by the WEF. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his deputy Chrystia Freeland are both WEF young global leaders who have completely sold their soul to Klaus Schwab and his vision for the future. And make no mistake, that vision involves depopulating the world. The technocrats in charge at the WEF are so excited by their plan to murder the majority of the world's population that they simply can't stop talking about it.
So in the session we just attended here at the Economic Forum, I think there was a sense of relief actually in your frankness. You brought up some issues that others are reluctant to bring up.
Always. All the religious groups are against me because I'm talking about population. They want more souls. I want less on the planet.
At what point do we stop and say, enough? How many times does the World Economic Forum have to declare their sinister intentions before the world stops and listens? Klaus Schwab's right-hand man, Yuval Noah Harari, has a history of saying the quiet part out loud. And last month he admitted what many people have long suspected. According to Harari, who was promoting his new book, the big political question for the 21st century for those in power is, what do we need so many humans for? And it's not even the first time Yuval Noah Harari has let slip regarding their plans for humanity. He recently declared that the WEF considers the vast majority of the human population to be useless and obsolete. According to Harari, so-called common people are right to be fearful of a future in which they will be made redundant.
COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, we need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin. What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. We're now seeing mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition? Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life. I know that in recent years, we saw populist politicians undermining deliberately the trust that people have in important institutions like universities, like respectable media outlets. These populist politicians told people that, say, scientists are this small elite, disconnected from the real people. I mean, all this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news. Humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over.
Harari's comments are deeply disturbing because when they are placed in context with comments by other WEF advisors like Bill Gates and his desire for death panels, it becomes clear that they have mass murder on their mind. How much more evidence is required before conspiracy theory becomes a conspiracy fact?